Hi, I'm Alan Ross. I'm the managing editor of APC Media's publications, Transformer Technology, Power Systems Technology, and Women in Power Systems. We're here at the IEEE PES&T conference in Anaheim in 2024, the 60th anniversary. These interviews are with thought leaders to be able to bring the best of the marketplace to you. My next guest is Drew Welton. We've done this before, haven't we?
We have, Alan. It's great to see you again, as always.
Good to be seen, good to see you. I've asked it before, but I'm going to ask it. How did you get into the industry in the first place, the power industry?
Well, that's a very interesting story, and it all starts with a mentor that gives you an opportunity. I went to college, a small college out in Durango, Colorado, mostly because I wanted to ski, and my major was business administration.
You were a ski bum who got an education.
I'm still a ski bum, okay, Alan, although I have a bit more education at this point. But, you know, I went to, moved to Florida, Largo, Florida, and went to work for Beckwith Electric Company, who is now part of Hubbell, of course you know, and I was in inventory management. So I helped with all the, of course they do all their own manufacturing in-house. So I was in inventory management. Well, then there was this unfortunate incident where a tornado came off the Gulf of Mexico and up through Pinellas Park and completely wiped out our building. I mean, it just totally devastated everything. My stockroom was spread out over US 19. It was a big mess. Well, Bob Beckwith, the owner of Beckwith Electric at that time, had a choice. Shut down the business and take his insurance money or rebuild. So of course he decided he was going to rebuild. He always had the interest of his employees, and you know, none of us lost an hour's worth of pay during that whole rebuild. So we started moving into a temporary building right off the bat, and we were very, very concerned about our customers, what their perception was. Can we still get Beckwith controls and relays? Can we still get the equipment that we need? And we did have a bit of a delay in our lead times, as you can imagine, but we moved into a temporary building. So the vice president of sales and marketing, Lou Roberson, great guy, long since retired, came to me and he said, Drew, he said, can we borrow you for a special project? We'd like to put you on the phones and have you start calling our customers and letting them know that we're back up and running, and
because you have no inventory.
Right, exactly. So I went ahead on this special project, and then he wanted me. I was very enthusiastic about it. I got to know some of our customers really well, so he saw my enthusiasm, and we had an opening in inside sales and tech support. Now, I didn't know a protective relay or an LTC control from a resistor or a capacitor. I had no clue really what we did. And I said, well, Lou, tech support, I said, there's a lot for me to learn. He said, well, Drew, he says, I see you have a good aptitude not only for selling, but also in relating to customers. So he gave me that opportunity back in 1990. And it just so happened we had an opening in the position because somebody got promoted to area sales manager, and so I moved into his shoes. And I was very, very, very fortunate to be mentored by a gentleman by the name of Charles Mozina, Chuck Mozina, as most people knew him. And he was hired from Beckwith Electric, from Cleveland Electric, where he was a senior protection engineer and really well known in the industry. And as an inside salesperson, I'd take all the tech support calls, and most of them at first I couldn't answer, so I'd have to give them to Chuck. So I'd go into Chuck's office afterwards and, tell me about this question. And he'd explain everything to me, and this went on for a couple of years. And the more and more I grew familiar with protective relaying and controls, we had an area sales manager out west that left the company, so they had an opening in that. Well, Chuck went into Lou Roberson's office and said, you got to give Drew a chance. He can get out there, and Lou said, well, I don't think he's ever given a live presentation in front of a customer. Well, to make a long story short, it was a very successful introduction into my career, and in 1997, after I'd been in that position a while and done very well, Omicron Electronics approached me, and they were just getting started in the US. They saw one of my presentations and offered me a job at Omicron.
Right.
And you know, Omicron now, I think they have like 1,800 employees worldwide.
Right.
Well, I was employee number 30 in
Really?
the entire company.
Wow.
And I started as an area sales manager in the Southeast. And after 10 years of that, of course, all they had were relay test sets. So I joined IEEE at that point in time, which was recommended by my peers, and started attending the PSRC, Protective Relay and Controls Committee, and really started to embrace the technical part of being a salesperson. And I thought this was just so important. And of course, then all we had at Omicron were relay test sets.
Right.
Well, then we expanded the business and added transformer test sets, instrument transformers, breaker testing. I mean, the product line just grew leaps and bounds. And as a salesperson, I always felt it was amazingly important to be technically competent. I didn't want to be the sales guy that says, oh, I understand you need this here, I'll bring in the factory guy to do a presentation. Nope, I wanted to do that on my own. I wanted that credibility. So after 10 years with Omicron, I went to Arriva T&D, which is now, of course, part of GE and part of Schneider.
Right.
As the national sales director for substation automation. And unfortunately, when Arriva T&D sold the divisions back to Schneider and back to Alstom, which eventually went to GE, I went back to Omicron. And from there, back to Beckwith Electric, and now finally as a VP of sales for Intellirent.
Wow, that's a journey.
It is a journey.
It's one where you see the progression.
It is, Alan. Yeah. And I think that's important. And if I had to give any advice to young people in this industry that want to move ahead, and I see this a lot. I see a lot of individuals jumping from this test company to that test company for another test company, doing pretty much the same job, but maybe a little higher salary, or maybe a sign-on bonus, or the promise that you don't have to travel so much. I mean, this is going on constantly. And if I had one advice, and I'd feel like there's nothing wrong with moving from one company to the next if it's a good progression, and it's something that you're passionate about. But I don't think people spend enough time really in terms, did I as an individual do everything I could to advance myself where I am right now? And that's just not necessarily moving up the ladder and getting a better title. It's have I learned everything I can possibly learn, and is there more to learn? Because after my stint with PSRC, I moved to the Transformers Committee because I really had a passion for transformers, as you well know from our last interview. So that rounding of knowledge, embracing new technologies, learning everything you can, and then moving on, or maybe even starting your own company. This to me was the catalyst between moving from one company to the next, not just a salary or a title.
We just published the first one, and I thought, I'm going to try this, and it was John McDonald from GE.
Yeah, wonderful guy.
We published him as a legend.
Yes, he is.
Legends of the industry.
Yeah.
And I usually do it when people are retired, because I don't want to do a legend before he retires and then find out that he jumps in a pool with a stripper, and like Wilbur Mills, if you remember him.
Oh, yeah.
But the idea that legends have, one of the most important things is they're lifelong learners. Mm-hmm. The other most important thing is they're also lifelong givers.
Yes. Oh, by all means.
They learn, they learn, they give. And that's what makes this, we're going to get to IEEE in a minute, but that's what makes this industry unique. I've never been around an industry, I've been around IEEE, the power industry, for about 20 years now, of more, first of all, engineers by nature do this.
Yeah.
Lifelong learners, lifelong givers. They love learning it, and they love sharing it, which is what you're talking about here.
Yep.
I want to, now we've done the journey. You're at Intellirent.
Indeed I am.
Tell me more about the company, because how was Intellirent, because I didn't ask you this last time.
Sure.
How was it formed?
Well, it was formed actually by a gentleman by the name of Dave Gibson.
Okay.
And Dave was a founder of the company, and he saw a big need for not only providing rental equipment in this industry, which there's a huge demand for,
Right.
if you do it right. But doing it right was Dave's passion. Dave was a guy that he didn't want to run the company. I mean, he hired Neil McCaw to do that, our president, and he does it extremely well. Dave wanted to establish himself as the guy that you can always call and count on to get what you needed. He embraced it to the point where he really understood the equipment that he was renting so he could help technically. He never wanted to get off the phone. He wanted to be there every time a customer called to make sure that they got what they need, they got it on time, they got it where they needed it to be, they got it and it was fully functional and working. Because in the testing industry, time is money. And if you can't get to your job because something's not working right, that's a problem. Right. That's a big problem. And Dave was very, very passionate about this. So when he finally sold the company, he made sure, number one, that our leader, Neil, was going to stick with it and be with it, and thank God he did, because he's just a wonderful guy, especially with the metrics and the things that he brings to the company. But also that those that do the same job that Dave did carried on that tradition and that legend. So when I was with Omicron, Neil and Dave were good customers of mine. And I think the one thing that Dave appreciated was the fact that, first of all, I recognized as a vendor that the rental business is an excellent way for a vendor to get their product into people's hands.
Right.
I mean, some vendors aren't so crazy about because they think the rental company is taking business away from them,
Right.
But that's not it at all.
Two different markets.
It creates more business, it creates more exposure, and I think most of our vendors really now understand and appreciate that. So I came to Intellirent because Neil and Dave were my customers.
Okay.
And I'd visit them often and I'd give them technical information that they can use to help rent their equipment and why they should select my product over somebody else's perhaps, although they try and stay agnostic. But I think Neil was very impressed with that. And when Dave sold the company and left, he really wanted to bring me in.
Behind every successful rental of a piece of equipment is someone that uses that equipment.
Absolutely.
Training is a huge issue.
Yes,
and
it is.
It is, unfortunately, you mentioned people leaving for $1. There's almost a buy the talent, right?
Mm-hmm.
Hey, I can get paid another buck, I can get paid another.
Yep.
There's been too much churn, and that affects training.
It
talk
does.
to me a little bit about
it does, Alan. And
Okay.
you know, with training, especially in our industry, there's two components. Number one and most important is, of course, safety. We work in a very dangerous industry. Number two is, how do I perform that job? You know, when you have a piece of test equipment, where do I connect it? How do I run it? You know, how do I create a report? But if you follow LinkedIn, you've probably seen Robert Stevenson. He has all these wonderful proverbs that he uses about people in general. And one of his proverbs was, if you don't understand why you're doing what you're doing, don't do it. So the idea of training, safety, the actual physical performing and operating the test set, but also the application. Why am I doing this? What am I looking for? What is the purpose of what I'm doing? And I think this is kind of a missing component in a lot of areas, because I'll have customers. Let's say we're out testing a transformer, and he says, "Well, my leakage reactance tests, you know, looks funny." What does funny mean? Well, it's higher than it should be. And I say, well, what other tests have you done, or do you know why it may be higher? And they don't know. They don't know that, well, I may have some physical displacement mechanically in the transformers that's causing my impedance to rise beyond that 3%. So yes, you have people that know how to test, do a lot of testing, but do they really understand why they're doing what they're doing? And we see this in relay testing as well.
There's a lot of there's a whole switch now to data management of test results. Right?
Oh, absolutely.
In CMMSs and other things.
Yep.
Which then goes back to not just that I tested it, but I understand, as you said, the whys and the wherefores behind it. Because there's a lot of bad data and a lot of CMMSs that if you really looked at it, you go, that doesn't make sense.
That doesn't make sense. Absolutely. I was on the bus this morning, and he won't mind me using his name, but I had a customer that had some really bad-looking power factor results from his transformer. And Pierre sent it to me, you know, Drew, what is he experiencing? This thing has mineral oil in it, and his power factor's real high, but it's not gassing or doing anything like this. And I looked at the transformer test set he was using. It was a Megger, a Delta 4000, and I was sitting on the bus looking at the data, and there's Dr. Dean Robolino from Megger sits down right next to me. Hey, Drew, how you doing? And I went, look at this. So sometimes fate just works in your favor, and we figured out it was probably a bad test procedure, but you know, the wonderful thing about this industry, Alan, and when you've been in it as long as I have, and by the way, with Beckwith Electric, my very first trade show that I ever did was this show in this convention center 30 years ago.
Really?
Yep.
In the same building?
In the same building, and
Wow.
it was, it's the last time that the T&D show was here, from what I understand. So that's kind of a milestone for me.
Okay, now, so you did the perfect segue for me. I want to talk about IEEE,
Sure.
PES, T&D, and Grid Edge, because they're PES.
Yes.
What has been the value in your career and your experience with IEEE PES?
Well, there's been so much. I mean, I'm now, of course, at my age, I'm a senior member of IEEE, and I have been for quite some time. And you know, every mentor that I've had in this industry, whether it's transformers, relays, or you know, even managing people in this industry, has come from people that have always been associated with IEEE. And I started at PSRC, as I mentioned before, and then moved to the Transformers Committee that I've been a member of now for 6 or 7 years. And there's so many different components. Number one, I think, is the camaraderie and the networking that you gain from being an IEEE member. And to really embrace it, you know, just, you can come to the trade shows, you can meet people, you can collect your leads, you can follow up on your leads, you can, you know, find out who's who. But I think one of the more important things is to get involved with the local chapters, so that what you learn and what you take away can be handed down to others that don't have the advantage of being on PSRC or I'm actually a PES member. I'm an IAS member, which is the Industrial Application Society, and I did that because we had industrial type customers, plus they govern the co-ops and the munis, and that's a target. Those are target markets for us as well, but also on the Standards Association. And standards are a very important thing, and yes, you want to make sure that people are doing things the right way, and it starts all the way at the top, from product development to, you know, manufacturing standards of power equipment like transformers, to how do I test it? You know, what types of tests do I run? What should I be looking for? And there's so much knowledge and so much industry experience within IEEE that it's all about gaining that knowledge and then turning around and sharing that knowledge. So yes, there's the networking component where you get to meet a lot of people. I mean, at this point, I'll walk through I'll go to get my badge, and I'll go to, you know, see how my booth setup is going, and I might have 5 or 6 people that I haven't run into in years that
I just ran into you in Diego.
Exactly.
You came by this morning,
Yeah. So, you know, the networking, the knowledge, the sharing of information, the credibility that goes along with being an active IEEE member, and this goes a long way. The unfortunate part is a lot of your field technicians and NETA people that are heavily involved with NETA, which is also important, don't get the the knowledge of what goes on in the different committees that IEEE has. And while we have so many great experts on the committees and setting standards and writing recommendations, the problem I see, and I work very hard to do this, is to take that information and pass it down so that people in the field understand. And I think, you know, all this work shouldn't go to waste. People should get, even if you're at a beginning field technician, dive into what IEEE has done in terms of writing standards. But there's so many standards out there that they have to learn. There's NFPA, and there's, you know, NIST, and there's a lot to learn. But in terms of, you know, what recommended standards for testing certain power system apparatuses are, IEEE is an awfully good resource. And they're a nonprofit organization. I mean, when I go to a Transformers Committee meeting, we have a treasurer's report, and they account for every dollar that they bring in and what they spend. And it's a very well-organized, well-run committee, as are most of them all.
One of the things I love about IEEE is for the benefit of society.
Yes.
Not a lot of organizations that are they're for the benefit of their group.
Oh, absolutely.
For the benefit of, yeah, but
yep.
for-profit companies.
Oh, yeah.
For the benefit of the shareholders.
The student chapters are excellent, Alan. And I think, you know, for a young engineer that's just still in college and working towards their degree, and, you know, whether it's computer science or whether it's power system engineering, IEEE is an awful good resource and a great place for a young engineer to get started. Because when you graduate, you already have those connections.
Yeah.
You know, you have those resources available to you, and you can pursue whatever passion about engineering you want to get into.
What's next for Drew Welton? What's the next act look like?
Well, I keep thinking fishing, skiing, and visiting and traveling with my family, but retirement is probably about 1.5 years away. But as everybody keeps telling me, oh, you'll still be back. Probably so. There's always something to learn and something to contribute.
If you have knowledge, I have learned, because I've retired twice.
Ah, okay.
And here I am, right?
Yep.
If you have knowledge, or you have a way of getting knowledge,
yes,
and sharing it, it just never ends.
Well,
and it's fun.
I'll tell you, I to this day, Alan, I still am in the learning process. When I first came to Intellirent, I thought all our customers were out working in substations, testing relays, transformers, and breakers. Little did I realize how much of those NIDA companies were actually doing things in solar and wind, all renewables, battery storage. We thought that, oh my gosh, you know, renewables is going to take off. They're going to be working in wind farms and solar fields, and yes, we do have a lot of that. But I'll tell you right now, what's growing leaps and bounds are data centers.
Yeah, it's huge.
It's just amazing. I would say that a good 35 to 40% of our rental equipment is going out to either data centers or EV station construction or battery storage. It's just taking off like crazy. Now, with the current administration, they've come up with the CHIPS program, and they've, you know, the government is pouring tons of money into getting, you know, chip manufacturers here in the U.S. and to bring it abroad. Right. And we just had one particular manufacturer in Texas who built was the largest recipient so far of the CHIPS program, and put up an enormous manufacturing facility. And one of the relay manufacturers actually was responsible for putting in, I think it was close to 5,000 protective relays, not only to install, design, but also to go in and test. Well, they called me up and they said, Drew, we need 23 test sets. Do you have them available to rent? And we didn't have quite that many right off the bat, but we were able to fulfill the requirements for getting those all tested. But if you talk to a lot of your NIDA type testing companies and some of your ECPs, your engineering, procurement, and construction, data centers are a big topic right now.
Yeah.
Yep.
This is going to go off topic, but you just mentioned it. the value of NETA to the industry. NETA is different than IEEE. IEEE, of course, is the big dog.
Yes.
But the value of NETA as an organization to you.
Yeah, well, first of all, again, the number one thing to make sure that, you know, whether you're NETA level technician 1, 2, 3, and 4, the most important thing that they bring to the table is performing your job safely. And safety is a big thing. That's always job one. I am on the training committee, okay, for NETA, and we want to make sure that every technician who is extremely busy in his work also gets the education that they need to move forward and advance their careers in the field of testing and commissioning. And that's what NETA, IEEE writes the standards, writes the recommendations on how to test and how things should be tested. NETA is the group that says this is how you're going to do it, and this is how you're going to perform that test. This is how you're going to, you know, understand the fundamentals of electricity, electric circuits, and everything that has to do with it. So it's almost like having a group in a company where you have R&D designing things, and then you have an end user that has to use the product that you've developed. And I think what, you know, the big thing about NETA is, and being on the training committee and helping them write their standards, it's focused on doing the right thing when you get into the field with the equipment, performing it the right way, doing the right test, making it complete. And, you know, their various levels are really well designed in terms of competency. The worst thing you want to do is take a poor technician that's just starting out, has had very little training, and there's a lot of them out there, Alan, that are responsible for doing a job that they really don't understand. Not only is it dangerous, but it's also a terrible waste of time. So what they bring to the industry is, again, it's education, but it's kind of a different form of education.
Drew, thank you so much.
Thank you, Alan. It's always a pleasure.
I bet you I'll see you with another one of these, and we'll do another one.